Daniel Foch.
Yeah.
Foch.
Man, it's all good. You can say it like that too.
I'm horrible.
That's what the telemarketers all call me.
That's funny, man. All right, we're going to go for a morning drive. And where are we going? Are we going to go for lunch or something? Or?
Sure, yeah, we can do that.
All right. Okay, so we're driving around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I got no script for this interview. Just gonna ask you questions.
Yeah.
You want to sort of tell my audience a little bit about you and how you got into real estate and mortgage broking?
Yeah, sure. So it was a family business. Although I had no interest in being in the family business when I was growing up. You know, being a kid, you want nothing to do with what your parents do. So I used to work on horse farms. Actually, the farm that I was on got hit by a tornado. Funnily enough, it's like just around the corner here. And then I didn't really have anything else to do. I ended up getting conscripted to the Swiss Army. So I was like really in this like, I'm half Swiss, so I had to go to Switzerland. I was really in this like physical labor phase of my life, and I was like starting to get fed up with it. And I was like, I should probably do something with my brain. So when I was in the Swiss Army, this new program, they added a co-op program to the Guelph real estate undergrad that I was at, or that I eventually ended up going to, and I ended up enrolling in that, and because I didn't think I would be able to get through university, to be honest with you, without the working portion. Yeah, I just didn't think so I ended up doing a co-op. So it was a 5-year co-op program, and I because I was immersed in the industry, I just learned to love real estate.
Yeah.
So from there, I did the rounds at a bunch of different institutions, and then I went and worked with the family business, and just recently kind of went out on my own and started trying to build this group called Land Bank, which is basically an investment kind of capital markets advisory shop on debt, equity, and investment sales.
How's that going?
So far, so good. I mean, we kind of lucked out. Like, I mean, it's a rough market given that we're heading into a recession and credit is tightening a lot. But at the same time, I'm able to get in rooms with a lot more people that I wouldn't have if we weren't in a market where people are having a hard time getting credit. So it's actually been a bit of a blessing and a curse. Definitely a harder market to transact in, but an easier market to get meetings in. So it's been good so far.
I should have said off the top, thanks for wearing the St. Patrick's Day stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure. I even got suspenders here too, which is good.
Nice.
Yeah.
You went to the dollar store.
My partner went for me, so she picked all this stuff out, and I was pretty excited when I saw it. I got this like cool hat going too.
I like that.
Yeah.
So,
You can have it after.
I like your dollar store, man. I was looking for the glasses, but they didn't have any.
No, yeah.
No. Now, you were in the digital marketing space too, right?
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, I can do that. So, and that's kind of been like a really a big component of why I think I've been able to be successful in real estate. I waited to really like launch on social media until I actually felt like I had something good to say. But I used to run a social media agency for real estate professionals. So it was called Word of Mouse. And
how long ago was that?
That would have been like 12 years ago now. I guess when I was finishing high school, I got a grant from Ontario Summer Company. I'm not sure if you remember that. A lot of kids got like kind of like startup grants for landscaping companies or whatever. And I did a digital media company, and I literally, because my parents were in the real estate space and I had connections with a lot of like local small brokerages, I just like direct sold to realtors. And back then it was Twitter. So I'd start them a Twitter page, a YouTube channel, and a Facebook account. And it was like before they even had Facebook pages. And I think it was $500 setup fee, and then I had like a monthly trailer of like, it was like $50 a month for content, and then if they had a listing or whatever, I would advertise it on their page. So it was crazy. It was a different world back then, but that business actually ended up getting bought out by an agency when I was in second year university. So they wanted to bring on real estate professionals, so they bought out my whole book of real estate.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it's been valuable now because like I used to advise people on how to do well on social media, and now it's really been, it's
helped you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, so I will say this. A friend of mine, Chris, I think you guys have DM'd each other a little bit. He told me about you a couple of years ago. I was in our conversation. I told you the first time I remember listening to you, I was working out, and I'm pretty sure you were on a podcast. I don't remember if it was your podcast, but you were talking about the blockchain and real estate.
Yeah.
And I follow blockchain, so I was like, I'm in. But you guys added a lot of value. So I was like, I hit the follow button right there. And ever since, Your TikToks are brilliant.
Thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate it.
In my opinion, now I'm not searching out every single real estate TikToker,
Yeah.
but there are such a thing as algorithms, and I have not seen anyone drop content as high value as you in like a short reel. There's nobody doing it better than you, man.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best compliments I've ever received. Mostly TikTok's just full of criticism, so I appreciate it. It's nice to get a positive comment.
A lot of people in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, they think, TikTok, there isn't value. It's just, people looking at silly entertainment.
Like dancing.
But I actually find a lot of value on it.
So I actually don't consume I don't really consume content, like at least on TikTok. People will talk about like going into that rabbit hole. Like I've never been there. I've never like flipped through videos, maybe for like 5 minutes, then I get bored. I guess it's just the way my brain works.
Yeah.
Like Twitter, I can get stuck just like scrolling through for ages.
Right.
Reddit, I used to do a lot, but so I'm fortunate in that way. Like, but on the same token, I haven't really got much value from it as a consumer.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one to try and put value out into.
100%.
Like
if you can, so that's what I like about your value. You kind of use the whiteboard feature.
Yeah.
And then you'll pull up some data.
Yeah.
And you basically just talk people through it, because most people look at that data and they don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
And then you kind of add a little bit of insight, and it's amazing. So I would imagine you're getting a lot of shares.
Yeah, for
a
sure.
lot of business that's coming in through it.
Yeah, within reason.
Within reason?
Yeah.
Is it so much business that you have to funnel it out to other people?
It has been at certain points, for sure. Like there's definitely been, I mean, like anything, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? But yeah, there's been points where I would have to send it off to others, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
And to be honest, like I'm really more of a results-based professional, so I will almost always hand something off if it is going to require a high degree of customer service. Like I really am not a customer service agent.
Right.
And so a lot of those groups, like I'm starting to see a lot more fear in the homeowner space.
Yeah.
And so a lot of homeowners are consuming my content on TikTok. I would say like it's more owners than a lot of other platforms, like Twitter especially. I attract a lot of investors, and that's my typical clientele.
Okay.
TikTok has been more homeowners for sure.
It's interesting to hear you break that down. You mentioned a key word, fear. I did a Spaces last night with a gentleman named Sidney Himmel.
Yeah.
And obviously I follow the stock market for a living. Real estate's actually my favorite investment thesis. I love real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the anchor to most people's portfolio. But we talked about confidence in the market, in the stock market. It's kind of where we're at right now. And it sounds like that's spilling right over into real estate.
Yeah, I think it does lead a little bit. It's interesting because there's two different ways of looking at it. So when you look at the way that interest rates impact, there's this acronym called HOPE. I guess it's like Housing, Orders, Profits, Employment. And I can't remember the guy who put that out, but it shows how rate impact flows through the economy. So housing would kind of lead, and it did. Like you saw housing blow off in February of last year in the GTA especially. So February 2022. Markets peaked, rate hiking cycle started, people realized this was real, prices just crashed thereafter. And it would probably be kind of the same, it would be on the forefront during the recovery phase. But the sentiment piece is what's really impacted by public markets, I think. And you look at volume, like the number of sales, the number of transactions that happen in Canadian real estate, and every time there's economic uncertainty, it just plummets. And,
right.
and we've been in a period of economic uncertainty for the past year, probably, right? Through rate hikes and then now through U.S. bank failures. So I'm interested to see what happens. But that fear definitely, I don't think it's not a liquid asset, so you can't really like paper hand it per se and just like fire it off. So it doesn't materialize in a supply flood. But what it does materialize in is people postponing purchase decisions, and that really, really draws down your demand.
So two things. This is my take, and I don't have any data to back it up, but once people realized last January, February that rate increases were coming, I think we saw the drop as significantly as we did, as quick as we did, because it wiped out speculators.
For sure.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I think the other piece was like, we became really credit dependent, especially in the GTA and Lower Mainland. Prices were accelerating so quickly that they had to lever up in order to afford houses, and in order to do that, they were taking the lower rate, which was a variable, which was at that point was the rate was like almost 50% lower than the fixed rate, and so they're buying power was 30% more, and a slight increase in that also like drew down that borrowing power instantly. Like it was real. So yeah, like I think it stopped speculators in their tracks because the financial vehicle that they were using to speculate basically started disappearing.
Yeah. In that blow up to 2017 when we had that peak, that was a learning phase for me because house prices were ramping right up there, and we had cheaper interest rates. I'm pretty sure rates were coming down at that point. Am I accurate?
Right, yeah.
And so my lesson there was like, okay, you know what? When rates drop, when the central bank starts dropping rates, buy real estate. But that's more from a speculation standpoint, because I feel like it's creating more of an asset bubble.
Yeah.
And then that's what happened in COVID.
Yeah.
Like people were buying properties. I bought a trailer off a guy, brand new trailer. And, we were just talking about the economy and the market. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm buying properties in the Niagara region right now. I'm just not doing anything. I'm just holding it and I'm making $125,000 in 2 months.
Right. Yeah.
That's not normal.
No, it's not a healthy economy either.
No.
Like when you have, like it becomes a capital misallocation because you have a bunch of people who basically no longer want to positively contribute to the economy. They just want to speculate on housing. So that's however much money he had put into that. That's money that he's not putting into buying equipment for his business or whatever. Like he's selling you a trailer, right?
Yeah.
He's downsizing his business assets, hypothetically, right? Sure. So I think it's like, and I think that you're now experiencing the second order effects of that in the Canadian economy, where we've seen sustained economic contraction as more and more GDP gets pulled into residential investment, like so real estate commissions and home renovations, and out of whatever research and development. Like I think OECD has us as the lowest performing advanced economy in the world over the next 10, 20, and 40 years. So, like that's what their prediction is. And a lot of that's really because GDP per capita gets crushed by immigration, right? Like you have more and more people, less GDP. GDP is not growing at the same rate that the immigration is. So, the wage piece of the Canadian economy isn't going to grow. And then we're not spending money. We're spending money speculating on housing, not being productive.
Right. Yeah, that's a scary thing too. So when you look at supply and demand metrics, what's your take now? So we're at St. Patrick's Day 2023. If I came to you and I wanted to buy a residential home, and I'd say, okay, I got my 20% down. What term would you tell me to take? Because I think that's a big question for people right now.
Yeah. So if I was going with my first thing would be I wouldn't, if you're entering the market, I would actually probably postpone that decision. I would say be patient. I think people will be rewarded for patience. I think we are getting the feeling that rates are going to likely have to come down as a result of the recession that we're going to be in later this year, especially if these major financial issues start to perpetuate. So you might save a lot on capital costs by waiting a couple of months. If you have to buy, I would say probably if you can get a 3-year fix that's priced as sharply as a 5-year fix, which the banks are kind of getting, there's differences in the 3 and 5 year bond yield, which are the pricing mechanisms. So that's component number one. But component number two is the banks are realizing that everybody's going into the 2 or 3 year fix because they think rates are going to come down within that horizon, and so they weren't making enough money on it, so they increased their pricing on the 2 and 3 year fixed. So the house you picked me up at, I just bought that. I bought it with a 5-year fixed, over 5% interest rate. Like it sucked. It's gonna cost me a lot of money over the next 5 years, but there wasn't a better option. If you can get a 2 or 3 year, I think that probably will give you a safety if there's any more upside to rates, which we don't know. It depends on the inflation scenario, but it could give you the potential downside in risk, the potential rate downside if rates do come down in that period, and you can renew into a better rate in a couple of years. So I think, and I'm even seeing some people going into variable because they think the Bank of Canada is going to have to cut. Not necessarily something I would advise, but you are seeing it happen. I think it's a roll of the dice anyway, and it was this time last year as well when you were at record low rates. It was a roll of the dice. If you were going into variable to maximize your borrowing power, you're basically assuming that you're calling the Bank of Canada's bluff, and now you've seen a tripling in your capital costs. Where you probably could have got the best fixed rate we've ever seen in Canada, 2.5%, right? Yeah. But nobody was taking those. Like 60% of the market was going variable, and it was out of desperation because they needed more borrowing power. They needed to qualify at that lower rate.
So let's go back to February, March 2023.
Sure.
Did you see that clip of rate increases coming? Or were you kind of taken back by that?
I knew they were going to increase rates, and I had warned everybody that they were going to increase rates. I thought that they were going to front run the hikes, and I thought we'd be, like, it sounded as though they were going to make an effort to be cutting by now, right? And not that I was advising people that was going to happen, but it sounded like we would have, you're going to get like 200 bips right away kind of thing, like over 2 or 3 hikes, and then it would come down. And that didn't happen. It was kind of like a slow ramp up. I think they were really easing people in. It was like, it was like 25, 50 or 25, 50, 75. And they didn't want to put too much shock in the market, which I get. But I didn't expect them to go as high as they have.
Yeah.
But I was expecting hikes for sure. And anybody who wasn't, I think,
Being naive?
I think so, or misinformed or uninformed, right? But I think it was pretty clear that was going to be necessary, especially when we're starting to see inflation prints and creeping up 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I was a little taken back by the amount, but I think the Bank of Canada and the Fed, I think they went like too low, too fast.
Yeah,
they're just very reactive,
and they left it too long, I think, too.
Yeah, exactly. That house there, is that principal residence?
Yeah, primary residence. First time I've owned a primary since 2017.
And so you locked in 5 years around 5%.
Yeah, just over, I think 5.14, 5.24 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you get a lot of investors right now? At the end of the day, I think people that are getting pinched out of the market were over levered and probably holding on to a rental at that wasn't cash flowing.
Yeah.
So what would you tell an investor right now? Same thing, wait?
I tell investors the same thing I've been saying to them for years, which is, if you're an investor, I always distinguish between somebody who's an investor versus a speculator at the onset when they want to be a client. And, I don't really work with speculators. I'm not, if people think they can time the market, that's great. I don't. So I'm, they're probably better off with somebody else, because I don't want somebody pissed off at me that I couldn't time the market for them properly. So
right.
An investment to me is a yielding asset in real estate. And, I talked about this on the Twitter space last night. If you can go buy a property that's a 6 or 7 cap in some submarket in Canada, and then we see comparable cap rate compression that we saw, so decrease in the yields that people are purchasing at, which means the prices are going up, you're going to see a better alpha than you would as a speculator who's leaving a house empty.
Yeah.
And you get yield in the meantime. So, I always just say that good assets appreciate. Right? Or people appreciate good assets. The market appreciates good assets. And it doesn't have to be some vacant house in the Niagara region, as an example, to speculate in the, you can earn yield in the meantime. And one of the things that happens as rates come down is cap rates come down, which means that as an investor, if you're holding a property, you can increase the value of that property. The other piece is right now we're in a market, take London, Ontario as an example. London, Ontario, prices are down 20% year over year, rents are up 20% year over year. So if you're buying right now, you're buying into a market where more and more people are getting pushed out of the housing market by a lack of affordability, which is pulling rents up. And more people are getting pushed out of the market by affordability, which is putting prices down. You're literally buying into the best investment market where your income is going up and your price is going down.
Right.
And so if you can capture that right now and sit on it and make the investment make sense, even in spite of these horrible interest rates that we're seeing right now, then you're going to have a good asset in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, which is the horizon you should be buying real estate for. You shouldn't be buying it to sell it in 2 years. That's not an investment. That's a speculation. You might as well be trading stocks. There are more efficient ways to speculate.
Yeah.
You can do it from your desk without, with the same amount of leverage on things that can get you...
Hit sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on options, you can get better leverage than people, but most people are just, they simplified it, and we've been in a bull market in Canada for 25 years, so I think real estate speculation has become like our national sport, right?
That's good. I like that. What do you think about Sudbury?
I like the Sudbury market. There's a market just south of Sudbury that I like a lot called French River.
Talk about it. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, so it's smaller. It's like a cottage country. It's somewhere between Parry Sound and Sudbury. So we do a lot of investing in that area, and there's a lot of multiplex stuff there. I like those. I like a lot of the older areas. I like Sudbury. I like Cornwall. I really, really like Cornwall.
Yeah.
We do a lot of investing in Cornwall.
I've got 2 investments. One in Sudbury and one just not too far from Cornwall.
Right.
So that's awesome. But can you kind of, I really want to pick your brain on Sudbury
Okay.
because I'm biased. I haven't.
Okay. Yeah. So Sudbury, to me, the thesis is that you're buying into a lot of seniors. Like I think that lower middle income and that need to move. They need to drive till they qualify to afford retirement. So I think a lot of people go to places like that. Or to places like Cornwall, but then so I think you get that element, which is kind of one element of your price floor, and those are people who are in a lot of cases, boomers want to rent for a long time, especially snowbirds, and Sudbury's a perfect market for snowbirds. But the other piece is I think the Canadian economy is desperately in need of diversification, and to me, you just there was an announcement that there's a huge Volkswagen's putting a battery plant in London, Ontario. Battery metals are, Canada is one of the richest places in the world for lithium, battery metals, lithium, brine, nickel. We know Sudbury's already in the nickel space. So to me, Northern Ontario and parts of Quebec and the prairies as well are really great ways to get real estate exposure to
Expanding labor force.
Exactly. And yeah,
I love it. I love Sudbury. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's all good, man.
But I love Sudbury for the job part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
The job growth because of the mining.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And those are like you go to a market like Sudbury, like the income there is amazing. Like as you get more and more, the labor pool starts searching for these higher paying jobs, and as we start seeing unemployment, but also like mobility of like STEM careers within the province of Ontario, as an example, like people can't just keep like going to Silicon Valley as an example because it's getting blown out, but like with their degrees that they're getting from the STEM field in Ontario, we net export STEM people. We have a real brain drain with young people in the STEM careers in the Canadian education system, and I think if we can keep a lot of that talent here by paying them properly, you're also going to see, like, it's not just a growth of the size of the labor force, but it's a growth of the wealth of the labor force, or the income of the labor force, where a lot of those like mining careers, as an example, are much higher paying than the knowledge work that we're seeing in Toronto, as an example, for young people. And so one of the big factors that pulls house prices up is price to income. It's the affordability metric. And if people can afford more, if you're moving to Sudbury and knowing you're getting a 50% pay bump, you're going to pay more for the house because you can afford it now.
Yeah. I still think it's going to take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to really find a bottom. Would you kind of agree if you had to put your crystal ball hat on?
For sure. Yeah, I think the bottom will be in 2024.
2024?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, amazing opportunities there for investors. Let's face it, we do have one of the best markets in the world.
For sure.
I know that. Like, do you feel confident when you hear that sort of speak about the Golden Horseshoe, even though it's like one of the big bubbles in the world?
I think affordability is going to be a big problem, and it's a huge headwind. And I think people overestimate that, like, we're going to hit the bottom and then we're just going to bounce off it and skyrocket again. I mean, I think that unless wages go up or rates come down massively, that's not the case. So I think it's going to be a much slower growth.
Which is good.
It's 100% good. I think the other piece is, and you mentioned earlier, supply and demand, is that, we do have more houses more people than houses in Canada, but in the Greater Golden Horseshoe especially. But I would say that we don't have a shortage of square footage. And I think that there was a statistic that came out that the average baby boomer, as an example, has like 75% more house than they actually need. And so I think if you start seeing financial stress and difficulty with people retiring because of inflation, you're going to start to see some changes in the way that we actually use existing square footage. Like a lot of the large McMansions that are being built right now are built basically to become rooming houses. So you're seeing like a lot of like DIY density almost.
Right.
And I think we'll continue to see that happen. And the Bill 23 that's coming into Ontario is a really good policy iteration of what that'll look like. So basically what you're seeing now is the government saying you should be able to multiplex any house in the province of Ontario. If we see that happen, that could, and especially if it happens at the same time that financial stress takes place, I think you'll start seeing people putting extra units in their houses all over the province to bring in income to fight those massive new mortgage rates. Because you got to remember, like, again, even if rates come down and the average fixed is in the 4%, you're still going to see a 30% increase in capital costs on the average mortgage right now.
Yeah, and 4% is a healthy rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think 4s is a safe place for us to be.
Well, why don't we get your thoughts on Bill 23?
Sure. I think that municipalities have failed. Like they, if they were going to solve the housing crisis, they would have already, and they haven't. So I think it's only right that they get the keys taken away. That the provincial government, the federal government doesn't really have much to do about it. They're too busy, building 45 affordable units at a time or whatever, and making these announcements. I think there's one actually this morning in Guelph right now. Justin Trudeau's doing an announcement there, but the provincial government, I think it just had to happen. Like you need to basically put blanket policy out where it front runs zoning, because there's a bottleneck. And don't get me wrong, there's another bottleneck coming in the construction side, but there's a bottleneck right now in that from a cost perspective, it's cost prohibitive for you to add a unit to a building right now, a single unit, and it's cost prohibitive for you to develop a property, and it's time prohibitive. Like it takes, so let's say you want to go and multiplex your little single family house in a stable residential neighborhood. It's going to take you probably 2 years minimum, more likely 3 or 4. And it's going to cost you, I want to say like minimum $50,000 in consulting fees, but realistically, probably significantly more. Plus development charges, right? So you have to pay $90,000 per unit.
That's inflationary. It's all inflationary.
Yeah, like that doesn't make housing affordable at all. Yeah. So you strip away all of that, and the municipalities are upset about it because they just lost a huge income stream, which was the addition of units. But they're not efficiently operating that revenue stream. That municipalities don't run like a business. If you're running a business and you're like, oh shit, I could go and figure out a way to make that $90,000 development charge revenue item very quickly by offering it to all homeowners with that, all they have to do is fill out this sheet and follow all these rules, then you would do that because you're a business, you exist to make profit. Municipalities don't feel that way. They don't feel that taxpayers are their customers, right? They don't feel, and so they've, by not operating like a business, they've completely failed, and they've put themselves in this position, really. Like they've failed to deliver affordable housing.
No accountability. I
mean, it doesn't even matter whether or not there's accountability. Like they're being forced to be accountable to it right now because they are, it's completely taken away. Like I would say, I don't think that there is a lot of accountability in any levels of government, but I think, it's from my perspective, it's really just it's a solutions issue now. It doesn't even matter about the qualitative side. Like, who are we going to point the finger at? Well, it doesn't, like, who cares? Like, the problem is, it's all of our problem to fix it, right?
Sure.
Or it's responsibility versus accountability.
So you did mention, you didn't talk about it there, but you did mention developers and the bottleneck there. So I'm going to kind of segue that into how far behind the curve are we when it comes to, more kind of deregulation with Bill C-23, and then the developmental bottleneck that we're going to see because builders, if they can't make money, they're not going to build homes, right? So how far behind the curve are we where, let's say, it makes sense for developers from an economic perspective to build, right? And you have deregulation. Well, how long is it going to take for there to be more of a balanced market?
I think construction costs need to get deflationary, and I think that could happen in a variety of ways. But I think, if you're renovating a suite into an existing dwelling, you're spending probably $100 a square foot. And that might even be on the high end. If you're renovating 4 suites from brand new, you're spending $400 a square foot. So it's not like deflationary on maybe a per square foot basis, or our electricians' costs going to come down. But can we more efficiently? Can we deflate the cost of bringing up a single unit of housing to the market? And I think that you can in that way. I think the other piece is when you're adding to an existing building, you don't need as many inspections, and so you don't need as many skilled trades. You can use a lot more unskilled labor, and so you can actually bring your labor costs down because it's like hanging drywall. You need an electrician, you need a plumber, then it's like get it insulated, get it drywalled, or get insulate vapor barrier, whatever, drywall, and then your building inspection is just it's done for all of the mechanicals, rather than having multiple inspections throughout the process, which is what would happen if you're building from scratch. So I think as we start to streamline it, it should bring down the costs. And then the other piece is, and I think that this is where the federal government really needs to step up to contribute to solving the problem, is we don't have enough skilled trades in this country to build. Like if overnight municipalities, which could happen from Bill 23, if overnight municipalities approved every single unit that was being applied for.
That's in the process now.
Yeah, like some iteration of that to expedite that. So now all of a sudden you've just said, okay, here's all the units they were pending. Now they've just been checked off. They're moved to, okay, they're shovel ready. Now all of a sudden they're shovel ready, and you can go and build them. And now you've got an excess demand for construction labor, and that could, potentially drive construction costs up. So what we need to do is we need to bring in more people and the original Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force talks a lot about this, is making sure that immigration targets are matching the labor pool demands, and so bringing in more skilled trades. I mean, skilled trades or trades at all, but anybody who's willing to do a job, that type of job. I think we're at a point where we have we have a lot of people trying to solve the problem, but they're not all working together. And I think if you get the labor piece, maybe we can just do it here, honestly. We have enough room.
Yeah, we both lost our train of thought. For some reason, I thought I can go left at Dufferin, but...
There you go.
We'll edit that out. Shit, we're doing good, man. Now I'm in a fucking red light.
It's all good. It's organic. You can go at Dufferin, but I was actually going to say no because it's it's a really bumpy road. I used to commute on that road when I worked in municipal government.
So I passed Dufferin.
Yeah, I think this this little dirt road here though.
Right. That's where I was going to go left, and then I was like, fuck it, because it looked like I was going to go nowhere.
Yeah, no, it does.
And then I went nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Do you remember where you were?
I guess it's an occupational hazard for this type of interview, right? Yes. Well, I was just saying that it's we have a mismatch of so if you solve the planning issue, then now you've run into a labor issue or a construction issue. And so we have to make sure that all policy objectives, because the federal government is the one who controls immigration. So we need to make sure that we're immigrating the right type of people to solve these problems. Because all of the people who are immigrating still need to have houses to live in. And so it would certainly be helpful if they could build those houses.
What would be your absolute favorite place in Canada to buy investment properties?
I would probably still say Cornwall, Ontario, honestly.
Cornwall,
maybe or French River, a rural Sudbury. I believe in the growth of those more rural areas of Sudbury. I think that a lot of people think that urbanization is necessary, or everybody wants to live in urbanized areas. I think that they underestimate how many people don't actually want to live in urban areas. So
what about jobs though?
I mean, if you're working in the mines, do you need to live in downtown Sudbury?
Sudbury makes sense. Right. Cornwall's where I'm kind of
Yeah, so Cornwall's a little bit different. It's more suburbanized, I would say, and you're more manufacturing jobs, or not manufacturing, distribution. So Walmart distribution centers in Cornwall. Plus you're within driving distance, and there's a major border crossing. There's actually a pretty big black market there as well. A lot of contraband crosses the border into Canada, apparently, in Cornwall. And there's no way to measure the economic impact of that. But you're also in close proximity to Montreal and Ottawa. And so, from an urban agglomeration perspective, it's proximate. There's a lot going on there. But Sudbury, let's use Sudbury, because I would say I'd probably equate the two. I think fringe, rural areas of Sudbury, to me, it's people working in the mines don't need to live in an urban area. They need to be close enough to the grocery store or whatever, but they most of them want to live comfortably in a suburban or rural setting. And so when you get into your places like Chelmsford or French River, or even further out from there, go to a Dowling, the yield you're getting is wild. And when you talk about that excess demand, there's more people than houses. There's more people that need to rent houses as well. It's not just going to push the price up. It's more meaningfully pushing rents up, as we're seeing right now. Rent, we're in a recession basically, and rents are still climbing. And so. And the immigration factor contributes to that as well. Statistically, immigrants rent for 3 years before they buy a house.
That's right.
Right? So you've got housing affordability pulling rents up, job growth pulling rents up, and immigration pulling rents up. So to me, it's do you want to buy a house just to see the house price go up? Because the only thing that contributes to that is interest rates. Or do you want to buy a house where you can see the rents go up?
That's what I would be looking for.
Yeah, and so for cash flow, I think some of those more rural Ontario areas, I would say maybe a Saskatoon or in Edmonton, I like from a cash flow perspective. But the yields, you can get probably better yield or the same yields in some of these suburban areas of Sudbury. They're just so inefficiently priced. Like you're buying it below replacement cost, so you're getting the place for like negative
in Sudbury?
land value. Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so you're buying it below replacement cost, and you're getting rents that are not that far below what you'd be getting in the GTA or Greater Golden Horseshoe. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So the cash flow is just incredible from my perspective for those markets, and I think you have long-term growth. Like as we start to see, look at the infrastructure. In the fullness of time, I want to help people build wealth with real estate, and I want to advise investment clients on how to grow portfolios, and similar to what people are doing in the institutional space in real estate, but also in I think in small cap, like Twitter and that whole sphere. For the stock world, like stock advisory and stuff is really good. I don't think you have that on the real estate side. Like, I don't think anybody's really giving good quality real estate investment advice in that kind of like social media space. So that's like a big part of what I want to do.
So it's a niche.
Yeah, I think so. I think like that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is carve out a bit of a niche doing that for now. Yeah, I think like there are some people doing it in the States, but nobody's really like dove in on content and I don't think the way that I'm doing it yet.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Super high value.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm going to digress back. That's a huge house.
Yeah, there's a couple cannons around here.
Cannons, that's good. Okay, so that's more like a castle, actually.
Yeah, that is a big house.
Okay, I did ask you your favorite, but what's like places you would never invest? Like, no.
In Canada?
Yeah.
It's a really good question. I think that I won't say geographically, because I couldn't pick an area of Canada that I'm like necessarily afraid of or don't like, but I would say I wouldn't invest in anything that relied on capital appreciation to make the investment thesis make sense. And I think a lot of Canadians.
So you wouldn't speculate?
Yeah, I wouldn't speculate. Oh, that yeah, exactly. That to me is speculation. But a lot of people don't believe me when I say that, right? They're like, no, yeah, I just modeled in 6% and it works. I'm like, okay, well, take that 6% out. Does it work? No. Oh, okay. Well, that's not an investment.
Yeah.
So
right.
To me, that's like what I wouldn't touch is deals that don't make sense if the value goes down or does zero, right? I think I'm really like trying to get a grasp for what's happening with the Canadian market right now. Like we just saw prices come up for the first time month over month in like a year. So prices have come down, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the bottom's in." And like I don't like to be wrong, so I like to try and figure out whether or not there's actually plausible that the bottom is in. And I don't really think that there is, but I think we're kind of in a sideways market. Like if you look at the 90s, what happened? Prices dropped, they traded sideways for a little period of time, and when you're in that sideways market, you get those seasonal cycles happening again. And so I think we'll probably start seeing another down leg when we're in a recession. People need to offload some of those more distressed assets, and we there's no bid out in the market because people are fearful. That's my guess. And so I think I'm just like trying to get a grasp for why some of these outlier events tend to happen, right? Why prices are ticking up, why people are bullish, why we're going into bidding wars again. And it's hard to ignore the noise, because my profession is full of people like you're saying that they just want to say
entertainment.
Yeah, that, and like they just want to talk about how good and strong the market is, and it's not. But
the thing is, okay, so you're in a transactionary business. So that's where everyone's biased. If no one's transacting, no one's making money, aside from other ways you might make money.
Right.
But that's why that it's so obvious.
No, I know.
That's what's so disingenuous about it. It's like you make money off transactions, so you're not going to tell me basically hold off. And you tell people, hold off. That's long-term thinking, my friend.
Yeah.
I will get your business when it's right. And because I told you to wait, I'm going to have your family, your mother, your cousin, your brother, your uncle. I'm selling you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I like it, man. Yeah. Well, we're going to go grab some food, and we're going to wrap it up. This has been a great morning drive. It might even be afternoon, man. It's an afternoon drive now.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you very much. Where can people find you that don't know who you are?
Yeah, just Google me. My last name's like kind of unique, so Daniel Foch, F-O-C-H, and Google will typically give you the platform that you're most likely to click my account on. I'm on like everything, so yeah.
Awesome. And if you like this content, you know to hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave a comment. If you don't like it, you can leave a comment. That actually still helps me out.
Yeah,
So
argue.
thank you very much. And that's about it, man. Thanks for joining me.